Hey guys, it's Mario. Welcome to my new format. In this format, I want to speak to people who are in data and AI careers because I think it's a very important field. We need a lot more people with diverse backgrounds. And at the moment, it seems kind of like a limited space where no one can enter. And I want to change that with this format. And I have a very special guest today with me. He actually was a wind turbine engineer by education, but he somehow ended up as a senior data scientist at a big German company called Henkel. And yeah, I will just hand over to you. You can say a few words about yourself.
Thank you so much, Mario, and hi community. I'm indeed a senior data scientist at Henkel, and I leverage data science and data communities to make an impact there in the R&D space. My career spanned startups and corporations in the energy and in the chemistry sectors across Germany and the US. I also create online courses on data technologies like Apache Spark, and I volunteer in the open source community. I love to learn, and right now stuff that I'm learning is in the agile and the product space, where actually I see the biggest blockers for value generation with AI. If you have thoughts or common interests here, then let's connect on LinkedIn, where I talk about teams, data, science, and products. Hi, Mario.
Hi. And actually, you forgot one of the very cool things I just saw on your LinkedIn. I heard you are announced as one of the top corporate influencers in Germany, which I think people probably will see in this call as well. But I think it's part of the like authentic nature that you just have, because like I think we met first online, but then in real life, and you know, like at least for me personally, when I see you on LinkedIn, I'm always happy because you seem very genuinely like curious about what you do. Also in the comments, it's not so much about pushing like your own narrative, and I think that's pretty cool. So that's why I'm also very happy that we start this first session today, that we can really have an authentic like conversation about the topic. So it sounds good, and I'm actually I didn't know that you like try to go into the product space, because as you know, that's where kind of I'm from. So yeah, let's see where the conversation goes in that claim. And what I want to do actually to maybe start off the conversation a bit is because right we read every day on the news about AI, about the latest like tech advancements, and technically speaking, every day you could be saying like what will be the future tomorrow, right? And it's even easier to look at like what was last year, but especially you as like a person that really works with data and machine learning models and so on, and not just like talks about them or sells them. What would you say, like, if you look at the future, what will be the future of data in like the next years? What do you think, data and AI?
Yeah, Mario, I think that's such a deep question, right? And to answer this, one would have to know everything and be extremely good at extrapolating. I think we can see a couple of trends emerging. So one thing is that AI technology is increasingly commoditized. Think about automated machine learning. If you're a data scientist listening to this, maybe you're like, oh my God, no, not automated machine learning, it's not that good. But come on, I think many of standard problems that emerge in the business you can solve with this. The whole thing with LLMs, actually, they're unrolled as APIs, so it's relatively easy to use them. So that's one thing. And when I talk about commoditization, another thing that I mean is standardization. We have seen standards emerge in the deep learning space with stuff like Onyx. And now I think we will also see this increasingly at these interfaces. Who says there can't be a standard for an API for an LLM? So I think this is one of the trends that I see, this commoditization of AI.
I actually wrote a paper about that. I don't know if you know, but about AutoML and like no-code tech. And I also just saw on LinkedIn that there's now also in these business journals, they also picked up on the trend, and they're all saying, you know, that's the future for entrepreneurship. Maybe also like, you know, entrepreneurs now, you always need a programmer, whatever. Actually, my good friend of mine, we also worked on an idea, and we just like used Lovable. I don't know if you know it.
Yeah, I know Lovable.
It's crazy, right? Like I looked at the code. I'm not 100% sure always I trust everything that comes out of it, but the idea of that's pretty exciting. But if you think about that, I mean, the positive sides are easily to be named, right? Like I mean, someone who's not doesn't have your skill set, maybe, right, can suddenly create a machine learning model. That's kind of what my research was also about. But what would you say, like, is there something that you would be afraid of, maybe also like risks that you see, and maybe not the typical ones, like the AI can hallucinate? Okay, we heard that like 100 times. But if you really think maybe about the work that you do, where would you say like would be the biggest lever that you see, and maybe the biggest risk that you would see in this technology being used?
Yeah, I think this is such a fundamental question, because on the one side we hear about technology a lot, and there's a lot of excitement about these new technological advances, which is granted, they're truly exciting. But if this technology is commoditized, where does the competitive advantage come from? I think it doesn't come so much from technical capability or the implementation knowledge. I think fundamentally it boils down to data, proprietary data that you have. So I work in the R&D domain, and their domain knowledge is really key. This is data that you as a company own that nobody else can know. So if everybody has, let's say, commoditized tools, in the data, this is where the differentiator is. Okay.
So the data, the one thing, like, because I think we're also following some like interesting people like Tian K, Feng, for example. He's like very big in this data governance space. So that's the one thing. And I think you mentioned like something else. That's at least what I think. On top of that is the idea, right? Because I mean, building a machine learning model, okay, that can be maybe, that's not the unique advantage you maybe have, but the data you have, and maybe then also how you apply the data. Would you agree with that? Or I think like something else is there that I didn't think about when I make that statement?
You talk about an idea. Somebody very smart once said, ideas don't have value. What has value is the implementation. For me, when you look at what we are doing, or at least what I'm seeing, is we love technology and we love to implement things. For me, it's more about which problem is worth solving. This is what I mean by product skills. Yeah. Imagine this, right? Like everybody heard about RAG like one and a half years ago. RAG. Let's build a chatbot. It's the first thing that you do. But when you live in this world of commoditized AI, everybody can build a chatbot. Does it actually make sense to build a chatbot? Does it make sense to invest these resources that you have? And you know what I find very interesting about this space? Who takes the decision what to build?
Yeah. And when you say that, do you mean like, does it make sense to build the chatbot, meaning like redevelop it again? Or do you really mean, is it the best interface for the problem?
It's really the latter. It's about which problem are you trying to tackle with a chatbot? And here's what I see. In the past years before this whole Gen AI wave, I think innovation in the digital space has been relatively flatter to what you have now. So you didn't need to make so many decisions about what to build. It was kind of clear, we need a data warehouse, let's build a data warehouse, everybody's happy. But now suddenly there's so many opportunities, and somebody needs to apply the judgment where to best leverage these opportunities. And you know what happens? The people who are closest to the technology are the engineers. And these engineers now make implementations decisions. You bring a problem to an engineer, and many will say, I built something. But I think you need more systems thinking and more problem understanding and more of open questions, of a discovery process to actually identify the right problems, so that you don't waste resources building something in the technological domain, but before you build something, actually take a step back and deal with this innovation and think about, where do I apply this best?
So kind of the product mindset that you initially like mentioned, okay. But would you say at the moment, the people that are coming from university, for example, especially those that have very hardcore data science, AI degrees, do they have the skills to, for example, have this product thinking and to come up with AI solutions that really solve real human problems?
I think this is a great question, right? I mean, what about you? Did you have any product trainings in your university? I didn't.
Actually, I did, because my bachelor was more in like media management, which now looking at it backwards, I would say it's basically a product manager education, because you learn about everything a bit, like UX, product management, tech, so you can think about a lot of problems. But I would agree, because I was a product owner before, that a lot of the really techie people I met, they are lacking that perspective, right? For example, you told them, can you please build an app that does this? And then maybe like the logic was working, but the interface was not understandable. The button was not clear. People didn't really know what they were getting themselves into when they used the the solution that we build. And then you could definitely ask, is it a solution? And that's why I ask you the question, right? Is this skill set, this mindset even there? And I think in the master that I currently do at Mannheim University, I think it's a very good sweet spot between the both, because our professors always say, yes, you should understand like the AI enough basically to be able to use it. But what really is important, but that's due to the nature of my degree program, right, is this the solution for the problem? And what is the business value of the problem and the solution? Because yes, it can be a very important problem, but if the solution that you build doesn't fix the problem enough or is too expensive compared to what you're getting from it, right? I mean, you could like throw a lot of problems into a chatbot and probably get some answer. But the question is, was it worth now spending 100 euros a month on that if maybe you only spent like 20 minutes of your monthly time on that, and the only thing you got was emotional support from technology at the end of the day? So I think I did have it, but I notice a lot, especially with AI people, that they are lacking that knowledge. And that's exactly why I asked you at the end of the day, right? Do you think people have that when they come from a traditional tech background?
I don't think so. Yeah. And typically, an organization would have to employ product people to do this. But since engineers are so close to this new technological development, I think they are in a role where they can have enormous leverage if they build the right things.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, that's like where we first physically met, right? It was this digital Leute summit, which is all about products. But you saw the people who were there, they were UX people, product people, AI people, but they were functioning together. And right, that's at the end of the day also why I always see every development in AI, data science, even a dashboard, for me is a product which needs to have a good UX, needs to be, used by people. You have to have like product market fit, if you want to call it that. And you have to have users who are willing to invest maybe some, not maybe their money, but their time to learn the tool, And yeah, I think it's very important that you put that in there, because I also know from some other people that a lot of the data projects, they don't necessarily fail because the AI models are bad, or because the data is not there. Of course, the data can be a problem as well, but it's often also that the solution that you then at the end of the day gave the person was just not possible to be used by the person. Like, for example, something was buggy, something didn't load, there were some clunky words that no one knew what they meant, and then they just like mentally thought, I'm not going to use this, even though it is a solution, But then no engineer in the world could fix the problem that there is. It's like a design human problem at the end of the day, then more than it is a tech problem. And I agree with you that it's important that people get this knowledge, right? And I
agree.
Yeah.
Maybe just quickly,
Sure.
I want to interrupt you, because one fundamental concept that I really like and that I don't think people talk about enough is outcomes over outputs. When I think about an output, it means you told me make a dashboard with a red button. I give you a dashboard with a red button, but then nothing happens. You have the dashboard with a red button. That is not the end goal. The end goal is an outcome, and an outcome means a change in behavior. You want somebody to change your behavior because of this thing that you gave to them. And this is also what you need to measure.
100%.
And this is, I think, a very important concept to understand there also if you're an engineer listening.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, in my job, I also do trainings for people who build dashboards, analytics dashboards. And there's always one chapter in my training, which I think a lot of people are a bit irritated by. Why am I even starting that conversation? Which is like data storytelling and thinking about the user that you're building the dashboard for first, instead of now just mindlessly, pulling up some data table and then building a table and a visualization. Because as you said, the question is, what is the decision that the person wants to make, for example, or what problem do they want to answer? And we have to also acknowledge, and that's, I think, part of the data scientist and AI engineer and strategist and whatever jobs, is to question sometimes also the solution that people want from you. Because, I mean, obviously a person who has a business degree, they only have seen ChatGPT. So they will tell you, please give me ChatGPT for finance now, but maybe that's not what they need. And you or people in your team, right? They probably would need that skill, I would say. I hope you agree. Yeah.
You know, there's some great tools to do this. I did some projects with TU Munich recently, and even in projects that are not external but internal facing, I always use this so-called value proposition canvas. Have you heard about it?
A bit, but tell me.
Yeah, so the value proposition canvas. On the one side you have the user, and on the other side you have a value proposition. So you first map the user. What are their jobs? What are things that help them? What are things that hinder them? And when you've done this, you go to value proposition. You come up with a way to solve their problems or to create gains for them. And that way is in some rough idea of a problem that is worth solving, or maybe even going a little bit further to a product. So you don't fall into the trap where somebody says, oh, I can't see my data. You need a dashboard.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's interesting that you brought that up, because I wanted to mention TU Munich as well, because you probably also know they're pretty big in entrepreneurship, right? And I know that's exactly what they teach also the engineers at that university, that they start to develop and take maybe, methods that you would say are rather weird to think about when you're a data scientist. Like, for example, what you mentioned, it's probably a marketing or product management, framework that you're using, where you like evaluate even emotions of people. What problems do you really have? And I think it makes a lot of sense. And actually, now that you mentioned it, I think I know it just under different names. But I think that's also one of the things we have to work together at the end of the day to create a standard, that we can all work with, and that we all understand, and a language that the business people can speak, the tech people can speak. So I think the approach you mentioned is pretty logical, and I think very important.
Maybe one more thing to this.
Yeah.
Think about where innovation in the AI space is happening. It's happening close to the business. Everybody uses ChatGPT. They know their way around it. They're experimenting. And these things come always from a software engineering perspective. They come over from Silicon Valley and, 10 years later hit German corporates. But since innovation is in the business, this is also where these skills are needed. So even if you're a non-tech business, if you're just trying to innovate, having access to these tools and knowing your way around these tools is very, very valuable. So you don't go, is very, very valuable. So you don't go down a path that you just recover from after you've spent millions of euros. Yeah.
And would you say, and that's a very, very, sometimes my mind goes to places rather very hard to follow, but I actually had a discussion with a friend who's an engineer, and I know you are a wind turbine engineer by training at least. Would you say that this thinking, that you got that thinking maybe from that type of education a bit as well? Like the engineering mindset maybe? Because I think it's different to the software developer coder mindset. I sometimes have the feeling, at least.
I'm absolutely sure that this is because of the agile upskilling that we have at Henkel. We have an agile coach, and she has brought so many impulses. We even now have created a product community where we really exchange on that level. It's a lot of fun, and I'm learning a lot together with this big team around me.
Okay, but like, let's imagine you like a person who's not a data scientist, not a business person, or no, who's not a data scientist, but an AI enthusiast at the end of the day, and they kind of would want to maybe join your team, right? And they come from some specific different background. Like, for example, you came from wind turbine engineering. I'm coming from like media management. Other people might be politics majors or designers. Was there something specific that you did that helped you to go from that one place to another? Maybe also something rather unconventional. I mean, taking an online course, I think we all have done. But is there something unique to your thing that helped you a lot to make that like transition, both on a career side, but also on a, I guess, mental side in a way as well, right?
The transition from wind energy engineer to data scientist?
Where you basically started your journey to where you are now. You mentioned Henkel, but probably there was other things in between as well.
One thing I can tell you is that even as a teenager, I was coding. I always loved coding, and actually during university, my fellow co-students said to me, yeah, you know, Florian, Excel, LED, that's all you think about. Because I was actually programming a lot at Siemens in Visual Basic for applications. And I was also programming microcontrollers on the side. This is where this LED came in. And in my wind energy studies, there was a PhD student who really needed help with coding. He was extremely bright and just didn't know how to code, and I took over that part. This is what ultimately helped me get a job at an MIT-founded startup in the US, where I wrote my master thesis. I developed a control system for a welding robot, and after that I was in charge of the models for developing a manufacturing facility that wasn't built yet, so it was a lot of projection, economics projection, time, resources, people, you name it. And during that time, I read a lot of MIT Tech Review, which is like this tech. Yeah, okay, you know, right? Like a tech paper from MIT. It has all the trends and everything you need to know there in also the ML and the AI space at that time. And I found this really exciting. And I said, it can't be that I don't know about this. It's so exciting, I need to learn it. And then I did, as you already guessed, right, a lot of online courses. And I started building a GitHub profile and everything. And at some point I was looking for a new job. And I applied as a wind resource analyst. So I flew from Denver to San Diego, and when the hiring manager welcomed me, they said, okay, actually, we are also looking for a data scientist. We haven't announced it publicly, but you would be a good fit given all the stuff you've done in your free time. Mind you, at this time I had a GitHub profile and I have talked a little bit about my work. And the hiring manager said, would you be interested in interviewing for this instead? Of course. Of course, and this is how I became a data scientist. So really, this effort that I put in my free time, this curiosity, this is what got me there.
Okay, so to summarize, from what I heard, right, the thing that didn't give you the job was not necessarily the degree that you had, but rather like the showcasing of the skills that you got, and you maybe get them through helping a person. Other people might do some side project. Maybe they have a business idea, they start coding, and then they build up a portfolio, sort of, right? Could be GitHub, could be website, and that was at the end of the day, if I understood correctly, the thing that convinced the person to make that proposition to you, right?
Absolutely.
And when was that? Which time?
2019.
2019. Okay, so it's not fairly recent still, right? So I think the hype was already on for data scientist jobs, I would say. At least I know this famous like article, like the sexiest job is data scientist. I think that was released before. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was. But the reason why I was asking is because I thought maybe it was easier, you know, in the past than it is now. Because I think one conversation we had a bit earlier at some point was like that it's rather challenging nowadays to get into the data science space. But if you think about that, I mean, okay, the one thing to get a job in data science, yeah, would be to have the portfolio, the skill set, you know, the CV that sort of like convinces a person that you got the skills. But is there any other factors where you would say they are equally relevant or would be convincing? For example, if you would be a hiring manager to take that person over another?
I want to spin it from a different perspective, maybe not from the hiring manager perspective, but from a personal perspective.
Yeah.
It's important to understand that a data scientist is not a data scientist. And there are different ways that you can focus your career. One is you focus on a tool. Maybe you're the best person to work in, I don't know, scikit-learn. Okay, and you can build a career out of this. Or you could say you are the best person to solve a specific kind of problem. Let's say image recognition problems in chemical R&D. You're the go-to person. Or you can specialize on interface. You're the person at the interface between finance and product, or at the interface between AI and cybersecurity. I think when you think about this, the amount of jobs that you can apply to get smaller, but at the same time you have more firepower. And then the second thing, for me, it's always networking, because you hire a person with all of their passions and all of their hopes and dreams, and you can get the best out of this if there's also a cultural fit. And networking can help, because people who think alike then find together. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, that's kind of how we also met, right? We just like had a conversation, it clicked, and then you get a better feeling of like maybe also recommending the person.
That makes a lot of sense. And I don't know if you ever did like consulting for people or like coaching for CVs, but I actually do that a bit for people who are like by training AI engineers, or they study computer science. And one thing I notice a lot, and I don't really notice in you or also in the other people I know who are successful, is that they oftentimes tremendously undersell themselves. So they like, for example, if you write a CV, they don't really know how to communicate what value they created, you know? So they write, yes, I wrote this pipeline with 4 different libraries, and you know, and it might sound impressive to them when they write it, but I would doubt that this is something that would be the thing that would be impressing like a person who's already in a business working, because they know probably that unless the person is not in the same sentence to say why they did that and what value it brought, right? I would say a specific competence is missing. And I have the feeling sometimes that this is also something you don't really learn at university, but you rather learn by doing, maybe like as you did, like helping some people out on a project, connecting with people, to build this sort of like self-confidence and understanding of also what the companies that are hiring, right? Because they are not research institutes. Yeah, there you could maybe go and say, yes, I built like a novel technology that never has been done, right? But maybe a business manager would then think, oh my God, please don't invent anything or implement anything that no one has ever done, because the risk is so high. So developing this like value mindset that you mentioned earlier, I think probably plays a big role to combine all the, let's say, hard facts that you just named, like having a portfolio, having coding skills, networking. They all are only things on a to-do list at the end of the day. But I think one part is also the personal maybe development that you have to make to build empathy for people, right? Because networking, for example, only really works, I would say, if you're truly interested in the person, and you should not network with the person with the purpose of getting the job, you know? And I think that's maybe a bit philosophical almost, but I think having a personal side to you and being true to that as well is equally important in being successful in like a job interview as the tech and hard skills that you got. Bold claim, do you agree, or do you see nuances in stuff that I said?
3 things. Like the first is definitely authenticity is key. I said you hire the person with all their hopes and dreams, and you should be then yourself, of course. You know, there's no point in trying to be somebody else. The second thing is, you know, I don't see it so black and white, because sometimes, especially if you're in a junior role, it's very hard to pinpoint the value, let's say monetary terms or so, or business value terms that you create. It is not a given. Sometimes, let's say the data practices at your employer might not be so mature, so it's really hard to track back how much value you create. And this is not your fault. So I think it is always important to see the context of stuff. And the third thing, talking about resume reviews, I also do this from time to time. And one thing that really helps me there, I'm extremely picky. And I can only encourage you, if you're listening and you're writing maybe your first data science resume, this is like your business card. And any formatting, let's say, error, inconsistency, I will look on. And people are like, oh, don't you look at the data science stuff? Of course, I do also do this. But data scientists are usually hired for delivering reliable forecasts, and knowing the limits of the forecast, and knowing where the context of the forecast. And this is a way to express yourself that you know these things. So anything where there's like an inconsistency, this is where it's very valuable to have a second set of eyes look on your resume. To have a second set of eyes look on your resume before you send it out.
Okay. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that's, I guess, part of the problem as well, right? That everyone has a different opinion on what needs to be in a CV. That's but a story for itself, I guess. Yeah, but I mean, I'm pretty sure if people would like ask you maybe on LinkedIn, they connect with you to get some like tips on that, right? Maybe that would be one good way to find good answers for this.
Yeah, happy to help. Happy to help.
Nice. And how much of your time, just out of curiosity, do you work with business people versus tech people?
In my current role, I work about 50-50 with tech people and business people. So it's a great mix. You sometimes dig deep in your quiet space, coding and looking at data, and the other side you understand the hopes and dreams that your business stakeholders have, and try to weave the web between the hardcore data science work and the business work that delivers the impact.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything particular that you notice that helps you a lot? Because I think like dealing with someone else who's an engineer, right? Naturally, maybe from a personality type, at least I know when I talk with people who are equally passionate about something, right? It's almost always easier to speak with them. And I guess I could imagine sometimes there might be a little bit of some challenges with dealing with like technical, with business people when you are a technical person. Is there anything particular that helped you dealing with this, or anything that you would say is also needed for people to develop in order to succeed in that? Because I think it's hard.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think we shouldn't make a mistake. Business people are also very passionate, just not about data science. And you can learn a lot as a data scientist from just shutting up. You shut up and listen first. Listen to the challenges that they're trying to solve. Try to understand what's behind before saying, oh, okay, I make a model for you. And sometimes you even need to push back a little bit because, of course, today everybody projects something on AI, what it's capable, that it will solve everything for us. But you're the expert in the room, and that's your job. Your job is also to push back when you see there's something unrealistic. But don't fall into the trap of directly going into the implementation side without first really understanding the problem and what motivates these business people sitting in front of you.
Yeah, I agree. From a logical standpoint, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I see it a lot happening. And because even like in my job, I train a lot of business users on data, AI-related topics. And I think I developed quite a good feeling for how deep you can get and where you should maybe use more rather metaphors or something else that connects a bit easier to the business thought that they have with the maybe rather complex thought about some technical problem that you're trying to solve. Is there anything that helped you?
My method is usually listening and then cascading information. So at first I'll explain it easy. Maybe I notice people are really into that and want to know more about data science in depth. Anecdotal evidence, the higher the person is in the business, the more they will dig deep or want to dig deep on very specific aspects. So you got to be prepared for this. And then you give them what they want. Right? Some people, for example, I work in the chemistry space, they are very concerned with uncertainties and uncertainty distributions. And I think this is a great and exciting topic. It's just when somebody who's not interested in that, I load that on them at second 5, I lose them. And they're like, okay, you're complete nerds. I can't do anything with you. But also sometimes people are very deep in their own domain and you have a problem understanding them. So then I think having them understand that you don't understand it, and that you basically know nothing in my case about chemistry or very little. This always helps to flatten the floor. But you need to have a conversation, an active face-to-face conversation to do this. Can't be via email.
And probably also an honest conversation, right? Like really being maybe also a bit vulnerable. Like, because I notice some people have a very hard time saying, I don't understand anything of what you are doing. Like, because they maybe think, I don't want to come off stupid. But I think you actually have to go that way sometimes and just say, like, to be honest, this is completely new for me. I know maybe stuff that you don't know, but we somehow have to find some mean in the middle where we can communicate that you understand kind of what constraints and like values I can bring, and on the other way, right? So honesty, I think, is a key as well.
It's true, and there's one more thing, because vulnerability creates trust.
Yeah.
And trust is what you need for other people because they're trusting you with their business. So saying what you're good at and what you know and saying what you're bad at and what you don't know is important.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah. And because I think when I look at your profile and also how you speak, right? And I think that's also why I click with you. I have the feeling you have a very diverse mindset, interdisciplinary thoughts, and so on. And I do as well, just because, like, you can see in my background, guitars, I can design a bit, I can play piano, a lot of stuff I'm passionate about.
I love your house music. I think it deserves a shout out here in this episode.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. But what I was asking myself is whether you ever look back to your 20-year-old self or something like that, and you think, like, is there anything that you could have done differently? I personally don't believe in regrets. But is there anything you would have done differently if you would have been like a young, like 18 years, you just finished school, knowing what you know now and going where you are going now? Would there be anything you would change?
Yeah, it's not the time for regrets, but if somebody's in that position right now, here's some advice that I think will help them. So there's this book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers, and I read it a while ago, many, many years. And one thing that really stands out for me is you need to be careful about place and time, especially young in your life, in your professional life, let's say. You can jump on bandwagons that will transport you to places you never imagined you would be. Mm-hmm. If you have knowledge about this, you can be more picky. I think at the beginning of our professional lives, we're very motivated, and maybe we're missing the guidance. Maybe, your parents are not data scientists, or your friends are not data scientists. They can't tell you where to go. So you have to be a little bit more careful who to listen to. Mm-hmm. In general, I think it's always good to go into a growing market, because you will grow with that market. And for me, when I got into data science, that was growing, and that what helped me also learn very quickly. I think it's also important to understand the cultural biases that you may have, the beliefs that you may have, and try to understand what beliefs maybe other people have. Yeah. And that helps you get to know yourself. One thing about getting to know thyself that I also think is that at least it has been for me, is taking a personality test, because then you see where your strengths and weaknesses are. I know personalities are not constant and can change, but you get at least a feeling for what you're probably good at, which is where you're passionate about, and what you're bad at. And this can help you navigate. And maybe one final piece of advice: do not be afraid of standing up for yourself. Nobody defines who you are and what you do. And if you have a diverse profile, that is great. You have a lot of different ways to bring value to the world that are unique to you.
Beautiful words. I couldn't have said them better, I guess. But I absolutely believe in what you just said, especially the diversity aspect, because that's also my personal philosophy, that you can become your own niche, right? So you sort of have like a skill in somewhere in the world or in the job market or whatever that you are best at, right? So there's no point in trying to be someone else. But it's especially when you're young, definitely helpful to find maybe mentors that you can speak about, who do something that is interesting. And that's what I hope this podcast or interview series will also do, that people can listen to other people, what they are thinking, what they were feeling when they were younger, what they would have changed. And I think what you kind of said, but I just want to reemphasize it again, is there's so much you can take a look at outside of yourself, like reading blogs, watching videos, but you have to also look into what you really want and who you are. So I really like the idea about the personality test. And I actually was thinking about, there was one transformative experience in my current job, or last job, but at the same company, where I received a very brutal feedback on me personally. And I just want to encourage everyone, whenever you get feedback from a person, don't get annoyed by the person or take it negatively. Just try to think about it, and it will hurt at the very beginning, but being honest to yourself at the end of the day, I think is very important. And I heard one sentence that was very smart, which was perception is reality, because you can always think, but I actually am like this. But if people don't see you like that because you have some behavior, it's best that you learn it from someone who's honest to you, and then you have to be honest to yourself to change it, that maybe you can change that perception, because maybe it's not who you are, but maybe it's how you are perceived. And I agree, a lot of stuff you can learn from when you talk with other people as well. Yeah.
I actually want to quickly hook into this. Feedback is a gift. That's what they say, right? And sometimes really hard. A concept that helps me navigate this is the 4 sides of a message. So you have two people and you are on the receiving end and there's a sender. There's something that the sender thinks that might not be what they say, that might not be what you hear, and that might not be how you interpret it. So communication gets lost along this path. Yeah. And there's one thing that I also like, as people are still fighting, they're not disengaged, right? If somebody gives you feedback, it's even negative, they somehow care about you.
Yeah, it's true.
The worst thing would be silence, nobody says anything, that's Florian, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
We don't
care.
care.
That's a lot. There's a lot of truth in that. I agree. And that actually, because when I had that situation with this feedback, I actually I couldn't even sleep, for multiple days because I was this feedback just crushed me, But then I started to find resources and coping mechanisms to kind of take from their feedback the stuff that I can use to whatever I can do to get into a better situation. And there's tons of books on that topic as well. One is called Insight. I don't know who it is by, but personal recommendation from my side. If I find it, I drop it into the comments for sure.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is also one thing with these personality tests. You need to know your triggers.
Sure.
And there's some people out there who can very, very much identify what your triggers are and really trigger you until you go crazy. Yeah. You need to know your triggers so you know when this is happening and navigate yourself out of that situation, But I'm sorry that you had this experience. The good news is,
all good.
I think we all have this kind of experience.
But it made me better. That's at the end of the message I was trying to convey. That even though it hurts, you should, as you said, that was the perfect way to put it. It's a gift at the end of the day, right? And maybe some gifts you are not so happy about, but nevertheless, it's a gift. Yeah. So you should try to do something positive with the energy that was given to you, in some way or form. Yeah. Very philosophical. Another area where AI will also become probably more and more interesting is how it can help you to self-develop, and what thoughts you have, make them clearer. But that's a topic for another day, I guess. Maybe one last question I have, because we're already at quite some time. If you think, because we talked a lot about being a data scientist now, and about generally AI focused roles, mostly technical, because that's where you're coming from. But I'm pretty sure there's either roles that you interacted with or roles that you hoped that would exist. So what would you say are overlooked roles in the AI and data space where you would say they're also future-proof that maybe people don't think about so much?
I think there are two roles that I see. One is anything at the interface between discovery, product, and AI. This is not something that's traditionally taught. I know you said now that you have some skills there, and that's great. Why is it so future-proof? Because you always need human contact. We had the 4 sides of a message. People don't tell you what they think. Some information gets lost, and maybe they're not even aware of the problem. Maybe they also jump into the solution space directly and don't spend enough time in the problem space. I think, especially now that we're dealing with innovation, anything at the discovery side of product is absolutely future-proof. The second thing is architects. I think again and again, people are reminded that data is the new oil, whatever that means. The point is data can be very, very valuable. And there is a high need of structure to structure these big amounts of data that are used in modern, let's say, generative AI systems. I think this is a really hard skill, and it's a skill that's not only technical, but it's also social, because companies are social systems, and I just don't hear enough people talking about it. So I think, this architecture and product discovery skills, these are absolutely future-proof skills that are overlooked.
Nice. And when you say, just for one last question on that, the architecture part, would you say, because I'm thinking now about 2 types of architectures. For example, at my company, we have technical architects or data architects. They are dealing with data pipelines, but there's also enterprise architects, for example, and they are more the data governance type of people. They try to make sure that the business functions also align with whatever you do. Because what for example, I've seen a lot is that in companies, maybe one organization uses different words for the same thing, right? Which is both an organizational problem and will then result in technical problems because you will have data sets that look different, but that problem alone cannot be solved just by the data engineer, for example, a data architect, right? It would be needed sort of like be solved by a business person, I guess, as well. So is the architect that you mean, is it like both of the ones that I mentioned? Is it rather the technical one, rather the social one, maybe we call them, or business-oriented one?
Yeah, I love that you're thinking this way, because this is also the question that I'm asking myself. When you think about concepts like the data mesh, it's a social and a technological concept. So it needs to be both. You cannot just develop one side and neglecting the other side. I think in traditional, let's say IT, many people think about the technology first, but at the interface with the business, there's where the social systems matter so much. So you have to see it holistically from my point of view.
Interesting. Actually, for that, I will drop also a resource into the comments, because I'm a person I know from TU Munich, actually. He wrote a nice paper about data mesh. So that might be interesting for some of you. So I'll link that there.
Yeah, can't wait to read it.
Cool. So we now talked quite a lot about data careers and like what you should have as a person and stuff like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, you work at a pretty interesting company yourself. Henkel, you kind of like briefly mentioned it a bit, but maybe do you have some interesting like story or anecdote from your work that you would want to share? I kind of know that you brought something, so maybe you want to tell that to the world here.
Yeah, we sometimes find that people don't know what Henkel is. They just know our brands. So Henkel has like brands like Persil, Schwarzkopf, Loctite for our mechanical engineers and machine people out there. Prill, Spee, Sios, Got2b, Pedex, Prit, Dial. It's a lot of brands, and behind all of this is Henkel. And people always ask me then, okay, so what kind of problems are you solving as a data science? You can imagine there's R&D, we talked about this today, but there's also stuff in marketing and finance. And there's one little thing that I brought that I'm really excited about. It's this thing here. It says Loctite Pulse, and Loctite Pulse is a sensor that measures vibration, acoustic emissions, temperature, humidity, energy consumption, and even rotational speed. And you put it on your machine, and it tries to measure all these things and predict anomalies. And having these signals helps you to repair your machine equipment early. And that saves you a lot of money. So we do these industrial IoT solutions. So people probably don't know this about Henkel. There's a lot of stuff there.
Interesting. And just like for a person like me who has absolutely no relationship to machines or factories, but what type of machine is that where it's put on?
So for this sensor in particular, you have anything that rotates. So a pump, for example.
Okay. And then I think it's like an IoT device. So do you have to take it off then and put it on your computer, or does it like send the data to your computer right away? And what happens then when you have the data? Because it's a lot of data you mentioned.
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting. So it sends data automatically via a cell phone network. So you don't need to do anything. You switch it on and leave it there. Battery lasts super long time. And then you get alerts in the Loctite Pulse platform.
Crazy. And that sounds pretty interesting. So a lot of data to work with, and I guess also in your teams, then a lot of data to work with. So definitely something people should check out, I guess. I'm pretty sure they will find more on the Henkel website as well if they want to get more into that. Yeah, nice, cool. What I would like to do, because we spent quite a lot of time, I'm very thankful because it's a Saturday actually that we speak and the sun is shining, as you have seen for the last 1 hour in my background. I'm very thankful that you were here and that we had the chance to speak. But I always want to give a person like famous last words. It can be just a nice way of saying bye-bye, but if you have any personal message you would want to bring out to the world, now would be the moment. And then I hope to see everyone in the next version of this type of talk.
Mario, then my final words actually go to you. I want to congratulate you on doing this experiment and on being courageous. I think we need more exchange in the tech world from very diverse points of views. Kudos to you. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Awesome. Then I see you definitely in the next weeks for sure, and we will stay in contact. And I will drop all your contact details, of course, wherever you can find them, and then people can connect with you. You can
talk about data science and AI. And I really recommend to follow you, because just the sheer amount of like diverse content you pull out. Sometimes I see you, in some machine room. Another day you talk about some data science technology. Another day I see you in a carnival with your company. It's just for me very, very exciting and motivating to see, to be honest. So people should definitely check you out. Yeah,
it's fantastic, and it's all connected.
Exactly. Take care. Bye bye. Adios.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.